So we're back to camp after our morning hunt. We've been working pretty hard at hunting this time of year. You'll notice in a lot of our footage we've been doing that we either have a gun in hand or a gun close at hand. There are a couple reasons for that. Both were survival. One, it was a very turbulent time in the 1700s, so it was for protection. But equally important was gathering of food. So without wild meat, they simply couldn't sustain themselves. So we've been hunting moose unsuccessfully this year. We lucked out last year. The interesting thing about moose hunting, exciting part about it, is you can actually call them in. It's the same excitement one gets when they're hunting turkey in the spring, and you can call those big toms in. So no moose this year for us, but we have had success. We have harvested one buck, white-tailed deer, and we're working on our second now, which if we're successful, should sustain us through the winter for our meat. We also don't waste anything with the animal. We use some of the bones for tools. We use the back strap, the silver skin, the tendons off the back of the legs for sinew, for sewing. We also use the hide. So this is a brain tan deer hide. And we'll be doing, I think right now we have about 8 hides that we'll be doing this fall. We hope to cover that start to finish in a video series so that you can see the whole process of how they made clothes. Interesting part, if one thinks about it, back as far as we know, long before written history, indigenous peoples were tanning their own clothes from animals using the brains. And there is enough tannin in the brain of an animal to tan its own hide. They didn't communicate, certainly between continents, yet all indigenous people worldwide took animal skins, if you would, and made it into clothing. So I'm going to warm up here. I'm going to have a little bit of lunch, and I'm heading back out. It's a real patience game. We have spent a lot of hours out there. We still hunt. We find good spots where a couple of trails will converge, and we basically sit for hours at a time. We have had a number of sightings, but we just haven't had that, I guess, ethical shot present itself. So we don't want to wound animals. We like to harvest them cleanly and humanely. So yeah, we've had some excitement, seen a few deer. Hopefully this afternoon our luck changes and we bring in our second one. So I've mugged up, I've warmed up, and I'm ready to go back out for my evening hunt. I'll be hunting right till dark. If you want, you can tag along and join me on my 18th century hunt using all the accoutrements and firearms that they would have used. I thought I'd talk briefly about the difference between the French and the English colonists that first made contact with indigenous people. The English, for the most part, in the 13 colonies were pretty land hungry, grew rapidly, either bought, stole, by warfare took the land. The French, on the other hand, had really no interest in land. They for the most part, integrated into native culture. For one thing, there were no women. The French came by themselves until King Louis XIV started sending over women to the colonies to try to populate it. So a lot of them married into indigenous clans and adapted their customs. The Jesuits, when they first made contact with native peoples, thought them heathens, not because they lived as Stone Age people, but they thought they prayed to things like the rocks and the trees and whatever, water, animals, when in fact religions were fairly similar. They both believed in a creator. The only difference is indigenous people thought and believed reverently that everything had a spirit. And so they would leave an offering of one of their sacred plants, usually tobacco, for example, when they harvested an animal, to give thanks to the spirit of the animal. So we've tried to carry on that custom. We try to do as many things as possible that were done during that time period. For example, when we build birch bark canoes and we harvest the birch tree for the bark, for the skin of the canoe, we leave an offering of tobacco. So yeah, I'm finished up here. It was a good cup of tea. My belly's full. heading off into the forest, and hopefully this afternoon we have our second deer.